And on the ice, for the only time this season, all 32 teams in the NHL will be in action. The games start at 6 Eastern from Philadelphia as the Flyers will be hosting the Capitals.
It's time.
You know what time it is?
The game for Tuscaloosa's longest running sports show.
The biggest goal of our team,
especially in the first half,
we at Bama, we're trying to be the best. Always is to win a national championship.
Something cool to look back on.
We don't want to waste a failure.
You're inside the game.
John Mechie on the ground.
Appreciate your interest in the game.
On your home for Alabama sports.
Alabama wins.
Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app. Powered by Tuscaloosa Toyota. Now, here's your award-winning host, Ryan Fowler.
And a big good afternoon to you. Welcome into the game. T-Town Tide at 100.9, 1230 WTBC, your home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. Man, we're going to get into a lot of different things, but I want to do a day today. We're going to do a Southern Owl House score prediction day. But coming up about 2:35, we've got Mike Detillier at 2:15. But I want to go back and I want to talk about a lot of different things. I want to dive in to a lot of different things because, you know, as you explore and as you begin to kind of work your sources behind the scenes, you want to understand some of the things, right? Because when you look at this Alabama Crimson Tide football team, when you think about, you know, where we're at, think about where we were at a year ago, okay? I mean, I played this show, I don't know how many times when Nick Saban retired, what would it look like? What would it look like, okay? And then we travel throughout the offseason and we create these expectations. We do that. I do that. And I think about what we were at, and I went through last night following the show, and I talked about what our preseason expectations were. What would you be happy with? College football playoff appearance? I mean, a national title in year number one is probably a little unrealistic. But in Tuscaloosa, the University of Alabama, we're a little unrealistic, right? I mean, we are, right? I have that problem because we're accustomed to winning every single year, right? National title or bust. We have that mentality here, and I think it's what makes this place a special place. I think that's when you look at coaches that want to come here. I think that's when you look at Kalen DeBoer leaving a program where they were already calling him the next Don James at UW, and he says, hold on a minute. I'm going to go to the best job in college football. I'm going to go to the University of Alabama, and I'm going to go and build some pretty special things here in Tuscaloosa. When we think about it, yeah, there's been some growing pains. They've also had to navigate a lot of injuries, and they've had to navigate some injuries at some key spots. And I think that gives you a little understanding of things that they're dealing with. I want to start with Kalen DeBoer clip, but at 2:35, if you don't hear anything today, I want to talk about 2:35, a little bit of a understanding of maybe where this team is from a physicality standpoint, from a growing pain perspective. Because, see, I think even though we say it, we don't even really believe it. Like, we don't really wrap our head around what the portal, because when a coach retires, or let's say that a coach gets fired, whether you want to pick out a coach that's on the hot seat and say, all right, he's gone. You get that 30 days, but then it depends on when that happens. Do you get a chance to replenish your roster from departures? And if you do get to thinking about it, I did some analysis last night, went back through some of these defensive backs, and you think about the new defensive backs that Alabama has added to their roster, including the freshmen. And if you look at this roster and you start adding it up, I think I counted last night 39 players that were on this roster that was not on last year's roster. Well, then when you start breaking it down from a defensive back, so you want to ask why this defensive back, and we can throw darts at Kane Womack all day long if you guys want to do that. But if you start kind of looking at a freshman standpoint, I go back to one of the greatest players to ever play at the University of Alabama, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah Fitzpatrick, we called him Fitzmagic from day one. I mean, I remember sitting in a dinner with our good friend Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com, when we sat there and we talked about Minkah Fitzpatrick, and we started getting like alerts, right? I think freshman practice number one, scrimmage number one, pick six, bam, there we go. But to think about coming in and playing multiple freshmen, because that year, remember the growing pains, 2015 with Minkah Fitzpatrick? Remember going up against Hunter Renfrow in the national championship game out in Glendale, Arizona, the growing pains that Alabama had to go through? But how about starting multiple true freshman? How about starting multiple players, new players? When you begin to kind of just back up a little bit, you begin to kind of analyze this. Yeah, there's some growing pains. Alabama working back to maybe reestablishing some of that standard. We'll dive into it. We'll talk about it. Mike Detillier coming up in a couple of minutes. But I start with Kalen DeBoer's opening comments. Kalen DeBoer had a chance yesterday to talk with members of the media. I thought he said a lot of things, okay, a lot of stuff. Listen closely at some of the stuff because he'll tell you a lot of things. Coach Saban did this, talking through the media. But take good notes because there's a couple of things that I missed yesterday. Let's listen back to the opening comments from Kalen DeBoer.
All right, good morning. We've had two losses now, and trying to find those complete games and as a team. And there's been times throughout the season where we've played very complimentary. It might be takeaways and scoring. It might be one team needs a little pick me up, the other comes through. But when the losses happen, those things get amplified. You certainly really look into that more. We got to play better as a team. It's what great teams do. And so we haven't been our best in those two games in particular. And I know there's other times we can always look and know we got to improve, but can't have the mistakes, can't have the penalties, got to have better execution, all those things that put you behind the 8 ball, throughout the course of the game. And here in the SEC, there's such a fine line, obviously, between winning and losing, and that's how you get beat. And so, that's on all of us. It starts with me just continuing to set the standard, that will lead to high performance. And I know that it just comes down to competing, being solution-oriented every day, bringing everything you have to the football team. I'm confident in a group of guys that want to be great. There's no doubt about it. I can see in their response each and every day, just showing up to work. And so, I have no doubt that that's going to continue to happen. We know that just being a championship football team is hard. We all signed up for it. We all want to continue to improve our awareness, our intensity. And that's not just intensity on the football field and all that. That's just everything we do. We know it takes everything we got. And, that's what we signed up for. So I think the biggest thing is the message has been over the weeks, not just this week or not just after Vanderbilt, but the weeks, all season long. The message is always going to be there's never going to be excuses. That's the one thing that, only softens character. It lowers the standard, and that will never happen. And so, again, talk about being solution-oriented, continue about moving forward, making sure you got the right people here. And I firmly believe that we have a lot of great people with a lot of great skill sets, whether it's players, staff, and that they're all working together. And so really, know that that's going to be the case. Kind of moving on to a couple other things, just with injuries, I'll give you an update. I know with Keon Sabb, he does have a lower extremity injury. We're still gathering information here, but we do expect him to be down for a while, and so, that could be an extended amount of time, and we'll just continue to evaluate that. I know there's a lot of, I think, one position group in particular, just kind of put them all together. All the other DBs, I think, just look to see how they progress throughout the week. A lot of similarities between just kind of the level of the injuries that they all have. Right now, I'd be expecting them all to be able to play on Saturday. So be ready to go. When it comes to Missouri, just Coach Drinkwitz, especially over the last 2 years, but I know it takes time for him to build to this, has done a great job. Great football coach, just as far as how he's developing guys and, bringing the right people into his program. Got some transfers that have added to, a solid group of returning starters, 17-3 over the last 2 years. Just a resilient group, won some close games. And so we got another great task at hand, as they're all always going to be in the SEC. And, our guys are looking forward to the challenge. I know this week's going to be, one where we get back to work and want to bring a homecoming win back home for all our fans, all our alumni.
All right, so right before he ended there talking about the Missouri Tigers, he talked about the defensive backs. And you get to looking at the defensive backs, whether you want to add it up, go and look at the defensive backs when you start. We already knew that was going to be thin at that spot, right? That spot is probably the thinnest of any of the spots, whether you talk about offensive line or you want to talk about, injuries. That defensive back, to my knowledge, counting it up, I think you've got 13 scholarship defensive backs. Now look at the newcomers that you're having to play. So there's going to be some growing pains when you look at the defensive back side of things. And he pointed that out. They're dealing with some injuries, right? That's Kalen DeBoer's words, right? I mean, he said it right there, the defensive backs. And as he said, grouping them all together. Sometimes when you understand it and you go back and you begin to analyze those defensive backs, yeah, there's going to be some growing pains. But you know what? I want to credit something coming up at 2:35 because I'm thankful for one player. Okay, and it reminds me of back to Coach Bryant back in the 30s, playing with a broken leg against Tennessee. And then when you hear Keon Sabb and you hear Kalen DeBoer after the Tennessee game, what if these players were very selfish? Because that's what we've labeled them at. As a group, we've labeled that. I mean, we've said it right here on this show. And yesterday I went back on the podcast page and I went back and I listened to some of my comments and I said, man, oh man. I'm still holding that expectation. I'm saying that this is the new college football, but then I have this different standard. I said they were going to go 10-2, and who knows? Maybe they're 9-3. Maybe they don't reach 10-2 because of the injuries. But then I go week by week, and I'm going, no, they're gonna kill that team. They're gonna beat that team. No, and then it's like I almost counter what my message has been. But you also think about it. It's from an injury standpoint. Now, listen, that doesn't forgive some of the opportunities that were there. Alabama had an opportunity to beat Tennessee on the road and probably should have walked out of Neyland Stadium with a win. They walked out of the stadium with an L, and now they have to very little margin of error. We're going to talk about that. We're going to do a Southern Ale House score prediction day. We're going to talk to Mike Detillier coming up in about 3 minutes right here, powered by Tuscaloosa Toyota, TuscaloosaToyota.com, 3325 Skyline Boulevard, and online at TuscaloosaToyota.com. Well, I'm just kind of curious when you'll hear maybe my State of the Union address coming up at 2:35. So tell your friends to, if they drift away, find a radio at about 2:35 because I want to go into a couple of different things that I think maybe help us understand. And I also just saw it a couple of minutes ago, my buddy, a guy that's a friend of our program, Barrett Jones, will represent the University of Alabama in the 2024 Legends class, a two-time All-American, one of the most decorated players, 3 national championships, 4 years as a starter on that offensive line, started 50 games, playing 3 different positions, tackle, guard, center. They say a 3-time All-American. I knew he was a 2-time All-American, but, he was a second team. So that's what they're labeling, a 3-time All-American honoree. He won the Outland. He won the Remington. I say it often, academic All-American, one of the highly intelligent players that have ever played at the University of Alabama. He won the academic Heisman, which is what they consider, just looking back up until Devontae Smith and Bryce Young, he was probably the most decorated player that ever played the uniform, ever wear the crimson uniform. So Barrett Jones just now getting the announcement. I texted Barrett a couple of minutes ago. We'll see if we can get him on at some point this week to recognize him. So I called him an old man because now you are an old man, right? I mean, you're a legend. You're a legend, as he tells me often. And Barrett and I, no doubt, friends on the air, but we talk often.
D-Thing, baby, too low depth, going crazy. Death Row is the label that pays me.
All right, we welcome you right back into the game here in Tuscaloosa Tide at 100.9, 1230 WTBC. We're going to take phone calls, a Southern Ale House score prediction day, homecoming at the Capstone. We're going to dive into that. Right now, we go to Mike Detillier, WWL, the Big 870. Hey, Mike, I hope all is well. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it, buddy.
Mike, the growing pains, if you look at Coach Saban, 17 years here in Tuscaloosa. And, I was telling the audience a couple of minutes ago, if you'd asked me prior to the season, I thought Alabama could be in the playoff spot. There's been some growing pains in Tuscaloosa, new adjustments, but sometimes our expectation level is a little extreme in the world of college football. But your reaction to Alabama's loss against Tennessee?
Yeah, it brings me back to something Pete Jenkins told me in the summer. I know I've said it on this show and others. That there was no better fourth quarter coach in America than Nick Saban. And, Pete was, I think Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach. But wait till he loses a game or two in the fourth quarter and see the reaction to it. Because his deal was nobody was better in the fourth quarter than Nick. He would come up with something, or he had something in the bag of tricks that he knew could work at that moment. Haven't we seen it twice?
Sure.
We've seen it twice of what's happened. So, Ryan, if it would be with just one thing, it's easy to fix. It's just one thing, but it's not. You got more than one thing wrong. And so this is on Kalen. And, again, Coach knew what he was getting into when he took that job. I mean, you do know who you replacing.
So I think it's the hardest job in the country, Mike. I think it may be the hardest job in the country because you're following not just not just a legend, but the greatest ever do it in a time that I don't even think I totally grasp everything around the new college football.
You're going to appreciate Nick a lot more 10 years from now. Listen, I sort of said that, after he left in 10 years that passed at LSU. You appreciate him a lot more when he ain't there. And that's no knock on any other coach. That's just reality and how he was able to handle things. And, he had a certain brand of coaching, and it was going to be his way. And he did adjust a little bit here and there. Lane certainly had influence with him and Sarkisian and other coaches. But, man, you were going to do it his way, okay? It wasn't going to be a lot of this other stuff. But, that's just the way it is, Ryan. We live in that world, and it's sort of microwaved that, we want instant success. Instant. And when we don't get it, then the blame game starts to happen with everything. But, and just watching them offensively, their right side of the offensive line is sort of messy at times, as a run blocking unit and also in pass protection. With Jalen, I see it that he is indecisive in making a throw. I don't know sometimes what he is looking at in his reads. He seems to want to hit, a quick check down at times, and then other times he wants to extend the play and he wants to go deeper with the throw. There is some indecisiveness in his play, and I don't think he's run the ball as well as we've seen him a year ago. So that part you got to fix too, and you got receivers other than Ryan, he's a tilt the field guy. You got to get open at times. You got to get open. And then on defense, I thought against Tennessee, 2.5 quarters, you played about as well as you could ask them to play. To be honest, that's about as well as you can ask them to play against a quality SEC team when you haven't given up anything. And then the running game started. And that is part of what we see. We talked about it last week with Josh Heupel. He sort of breaks you down running the ball, and then Nico takes off and run, and all of a sudden he starts to get a little confidence, and he hits it in the passing game. And Chris Brazel, I know a lot about, know his dad real well. He was at Tulane a year ago, and he makes that catch in the end zone. And then just a bizarre final 2 minutes of offense. Really, really head-scratching, to say the least. So, the Volunteers came out of there, and their front seven is very good. You got to give Tennessee credit there. Their offense did not play well in the first half, and a lot of that had to do with Alabama's defense. But just to have a 7-0 lead, Ryan, you ain't winning a lot of games like that. Not a lot. So that's a quick breakdown, but until you can fix certain elements here, you're going to be in nail biters every year.
Sure.
And every week.
And that's the part is you think about it. You know, if you look at Nick Saban retiring and you said, what would it look like when Nick Saban retires, the growing pains, the adjustment period. But then we, as fans of the game of college football, it's like once you get in the season, you forget everything that you said. You forget everything that you said. Well, they're going to be growing pains. No, they're going to go win a national title. I mean, you know, and then you almost catch yourself and you're like, did I really say that? What a fool. You know, it's almost like you let that fandom part take over and kind of, you know, your mouth says something that your butt can't cash or whatever that old statement is. It's like you write a check with your mouth that your butt can't cash. And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, that's a cleaner version of it, but I get it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you think about LSU, they start the season and you lose to USC. And USC right now, they lousy. You say, how the hell did LSU lose to USC? But they did. Okay, and USC took over in the fourth quarter in that game. Absolutely took over. And I thought Lincoln Riley outcoached Brian Kelly in the fourth quarter. And that was the difference in the game. And, you know, you see where LSU is today. So I think what we have to get used to a little bit maybe too is the growth of a team or non-growth of a team. Because I've used that term too. Sometimes what you see early in a season is a little bit of a mirage because the non-growth, other teams catch up with you because they have grown. They have understood, or maybe they do have some injuries, or do have a lot of transfer people, and it takes a little while for all that to mesh. Ryan, you look across the SEC. Last week, you know, very few people thought Georgia could beat Texas.
Sure.
You got them today. Oh, I knew it. I'm going to call you out. No, you didn't. Very few people called that game the way it was. And Georgia was dominant. The scoreboard showed no indication of how dominant Georgia was. And those two quarterbacks for Georgia, for Texas, they were running for their life. Just that look on Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning's face told you the story. Man, we ain't played nobody that got speed like that. They beat those two tackles like a drum. Every down. Those guys were on the move. And, I mean, it got a little bit closer in the second half. But did you ever think in that game once Georgia took over that Texas was in it? Not me. I could tell you were losing in the trenches. And if Texas don't win there, hey, they got a dose of SEC football. And they got a dose of a Georgia team that came in mad. We being disrespected by people. Everybody's disrespecting us. We're going to show you what kind of respect we got. And, man, those two guys coming off the edge, it was Katie bar the door. Ewers and Arch, they were just trying to get rid of it on that part. So, goes to show that's life in the SEC. Every week it's a new chapter of the book.
And Mike, I want to ask you from an SEC perspective, because sometimes I feel like as an Alabama perspective, we get too much in the officiating. And officiating, it's not where it needs to be. I mean, you go ask Texas and Georgia fans. But it is, Mike. I mean, we expect more from the players. We expect more from the coaches. When are we going to demand more from the guys who wear stripes?
Well, I think that demand's been there, but now I think that, everybody's got a phone that you can slow that play down.
Sure, great point. Great point.
Almost like Zapruder-like, that you can get it frame to frame to frame. Come on, you're on the hot seat here, and you got to get the call right. The stuff that happened in the Texas game, that's a bad precedent of how you did it. Of how you did that situation. That's terrible. Absolutely awful. Just like the targeting call and I don't understand a lot of that. I understand why they do it for the health of the player, but we talked about this at the Louisiana Line Camp. If you're a defensive coach, what do you tell your player when the guy with the ball lowers his head like a battering ram and comes towards you. Do they have an offensive targeting call? Because all I know is I see it a lot. Okay, you got a guy that's running with the football. First thing he does, Ryan, what he's going to do, he's going to lower his head, almost like a ram. Hit another ram. Ow. Okay? Who gets called for that? Defensive cat, not the offensive guy. It's rare that you will see an offensive penalty like that, using his head as an advantage. And yet some do. Adrian Peterson did that so many years in the NFL. He'd have led the league in it if they were calling it. Then Adrian come around that corner and dudes were making business decisions. Man, what? I'm not tackling him. And when you got close to him, he lowered that helmet and he jammed it, either in between your shoulder pads or head to head. So the officiating this year, I think, and as we more into the technology world, is scrutinized more and more because we see it. We see so much of it today. And, you don't want to delay the game, but you're almost to the point where you almost have to have somebody in the booth kind of signal down, hey, this is what I saw. This is what I saw. Get the play right. And, where does that lead to also? Because once Genie's out the bottle, it's hard to stick Genie back in.
Well, and I think now with a parity of college football, it's like officiating has always been important, but now it is more important because that little small margin that you have between a victory and a failure is it's small, and it's small. And I mean, these little bitty things can, and it's kind of like the difference between, pass interference call or unsportsmanlike conduct or whatever you want to go with. It's so tiny that those can be the difference. And, I guess it creates more ratings. I've been watching the TV ratings. Mike, they're off the charts. I mean, they're literally off the charts from a TV standpoint.
Yeah. This goes back a few years when all this was starting to set up. I had Tim Brando on with me, and, Tim and I, we agree on a lot more things than we disagree on. But one of the things we agreed on that, because I heard it everywhere I went, man, this NIL and transfer portal is going to kill the game. People are going to stop having interest. They're going to stop watching. What? It's just the opposite. And Tim felt the exact same way. He's like, Mike, I'm with you 100% on that. And so in both of our platforms, we've talked about it. You can live in Grandpa's world and Dad's world. Okay, that's fine. But you have to accept the changes that are happening in college athletics. You might not like it, but you have to accept it. Has it ruined the game? Hell no. It's made it a more competitive sport. When you watch the NFL and you watch college football, and listen, I'm a pro football guy too. I get much more enjoyment watching college football than the pros. They're better games.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Better games than the collegiate level. Much better. And so, yeah, you get a blowout here and there, but Ryan, it has not ruined the game. It's got a lot more interest. Now, people, it's a lot easier to gamble today than ever before.
It is.
And that's something, too, that why the SEC's got to be careful with this, and I think every conference has to, because you've now gotten in bed with the gambling industry, just like the NFL has. And that's why officiating, you're not going to always be right, but you got to try and get it as right can be, because there is coin on the line here. And so you don't want to mess with people that are paying you. And, the gambling industry is paying college and pro football at every angle. They're paying it. So that's another element that, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have heard that. The NFL wanted nothing to do with the gambling part till they find out how much money they had to spend. And then they put their arms around him. Man, we've been buddies for life. You know, it's one of them. You back from the service, man. I've been waiting for you. One of those type of deals. So there's a lot of different things, but the college game was so much interest, and you see the ratings for what happened this past weekend, and it's through the roof, absolutely through the roof. And these really quality games that kind of keep you on the front end of your seats, and you know, so and it's. I feel very honored to cover this game.
Sure.
Because I know with these guys, you know, people talk about privileged athletes and everything else. Man, I know privileged executives in businesses too. But I don't talk about that, and I don't talk about privileged athletes. They have a job to do, and, you know, you expect a certain amount out of them. But, man, to see these quality athletes and coaches and kind of go toe-to-toe in the collegiate ranks. Ryan, I guarantee you, when I was a kid, there was such a big gap between the haves and the have-nots. That's the one thing that's changed. If you don't come ready to play, you can get your ass beat, and fast, in college football. You're going to get beat if you don't come with your A game. And we see it week in, week out. Okay, who would predict Vanderbilt would play like they have this year?
Nobody.
Look who they beat.
Zero. I mean, Mike, you could have went to Vegas and you could have won all kind of money on the win total if you'd have had any clue. And if we'd have been smart enough, we'd have probably seen a roster changeover and be like, okay, Vanderbilt, you just don't assume that they're going to be any good. But they were.
And what a month ago, you know, and I still think he's in a red hot seat. But Billy Napier, you know, there was a lot of talk in Gainesville that they may change him mid-season. You know, he's got a few W's now. Now, I think Billy's on a ship that's sinking, but he's kept it afloat for a couple of weeks. He's kept it afloat for a few more weeks. And how well South Carolina has played. Ryan, I'll be honest with you, they lost to Alabama. I was impressed. Now, the quarterback play isn't real good, but man, their front seven on defense is really good. And they got some backs. They can run the ball really well. If you're not ready against LSU, almost found out how it was. They went over there, man, and they fell behind quickly. And, man, they were scrambling. And it took a missed field goal at the end to keep that game from going to overtime. And then, you know, Arkansas beats Tennessee, and then Tennessee beats, you know, Alabama. Isn't this what we sort of expected a little bit, that you sort of cannibalizing one another in the SEC today?
It's the greatest league in college football. It's not even close to me. I mean, you look at it. Mike, and I think the LSU-Texas A&M game's intriguing this week. Before I let you get out of here, give me your thoughts on LSU going to Texas A&M. You like LSU's chances here?
I think they got a shot, and it's tough to play out on that field. You got a 12th man. But, you know, LSU's defense has played much better the past few weeks. And I told you this a month ago when he got hurt, Harold Perkins. I said, they got a dude they're going to put in there. You watch what type of impact he's going to have. Whit Weeks, part of the Weeks and Weeks law firm, so to speak. And, Ryan, he's went from a second-string player to a quality starter to an all-SEC guy within a month. In 3 games, he's got, I think it's 34 tackles, and he made a play against Arkansas. The game was fairly close at that point. He blitzes from right up the middle, and he hits the quarterback's arm, and he catches it mid-flight and sets up a short field. It was game, set, match after that. But that one game-changing play, Whit Weeks has played well. You could have given me 6 guesses and said, who's the best pass rusher for LSU in 2024? Braden Swinson ain't on that list. Look what he's done this year. He's been excellent. And Savion grew up about 15 minutes from me. He went to St. James High School, one of the prominent high schools in the area. And he came out of St. James, he's probably 222 pounds. Now he's 280 pounds now. He is really playing good football up front. I still think LSU's secondary is not real good, but their front seven is. They've gotten much better. Arkansas was averaging over 200 yards a game rushing. LSU handled them. It was under 75. So they gotten better on defense, and offensively, you got the right quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier, and you got some talented receivers. The offensive line, you returned 4 or 5 starters from a year ago. Got a running game. Found a young freshman, Caden Durham. He's made it work. Sometimes, I had a coach tell me this. Sometimes what that freshman don't know is really what matters. He don't understand what he's involved with in a lot of cases. But boy, can he play. And he's got great speed as a runner and a receiver. It's made a world of difference for LSU. I think LSU's got a legitimate shot against A&M here. And, Ryan, this is a playoff game in a playoff atmosphere. LSU, Texas A&M at this point. It's a playoff game between the two of them. And LSU's fairly healthy. They got a legitimate shot. I think one thing with A&M, they go about as far as their quarterback will take them on offense. And that's the tricky thing every week. You're not real sure what you're going to get out of the quarterback position. I know what Nussmeier can do. I'm not real sure what you get out of A&M's, because they've played multiple quarterbacks of what you're going to get from that team. But, man, they fast, they physical, they can run the ball. And when they complete a pass, you better grab a hold of that receiver or you got problems. You got problems. So, and Mike Elko, I've known for a long time. Mike's a tremendous coach, and he took a lot of heat game one for losing to Notre Dame, and it was a bad loss. They were El Stinko. But, man, he's got them rolling now.
Yes, he does. Yes, he
does. Got them rolling now.
Hey, that's a little bit of a surprise there. Mike, I appreciate you, man. Mike Detillier, WWL, the Big 870 with Bobby Hebert and company down in New Orleans. Mike, I appreciate you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And the next time we talk, I'm sure we'll be recapping LSU, Texas A&M, but we'll also be looking ahead to Alabama and LSU. We get 2 weeks every year to spend on this dedication of the Tigers and the Tide. So we'll do it. Appreciate you, Mike.
Thank you, Ryan. And I'll give you those numbers, and this is why it's so important. It's always meant something, but they got more pro players playing that game than any other regular season game for the last 15 years. That game, look all the guys that have went up against one another in that game. Man, I'll take that group and I'll play. If I could grab my 53 out of that, I'll go up against any NFL team. That Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels combination at quarterback will win me a lot.
Hey, Mike, appreciate you, man. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Mike Detillier helping us out there. We've added a guest in between there. Barrett Jones is going to jump on at 3 o'clock. Jaisha, Barrett Jones, the SEC legend. We just got the announcement a couple of minutes ago. Barrett Jones will be going into as an SEC legend. And our own Corey Miller is going to also be inducted into that as well, the SEC Legends class. So we'll get Barrett on to talk about that. He's going to represent the University of Alabama, the 2024 SEC Football Legends, a key member of this Alabama football team and a great leader. Speaking of a leader, remember the Notre Dame game? I do. I'll share some insight about that. Maybe Barrett will open up about that. I've never been able to get him to twist and turn about the Notre Dame game. But, the sacrifices that he made to play in that game, we won. Kind of reminds you a little bit about Keon Sabb. I know we were not on the winning side of that, but players, battling through significant, not just a bruise and a bump and a scrape or that, but just battling through and playing with a broken foot. Let that sink in. That's the sacrifice, and that's where we're at in the world of college football. We'll continue with more of the game. Todd, 100.9, 1230 WT.
Section 1, the purple game.
All right, we welcome you right back into the game. All right, so I'm going to hold the State of the Union address to after Barrett Jones because I think there's some things that needs to be said, but I also want to, I want to be calculated with this. I don't want to, get rushed. I'm at 50 minutes after the hour. I'm going to take some scores, but I just go back to think about where we're at when you look at this playoff run. You look at the metrics. I think college football metrics, college football power index. Think about this, okay? You beat Missouri, which your favorite. Chance to beat those guys. Then it all really, to me, it hinges on that LSU trip, right? It goes to the LSU trip. You go to Baton Rouge, and I know we need to focus on the Missouri Tigers. You beat them, you go to Baton Rouge, you're going to win. So in a lot of ways, you sit here and you go, okay, Texas A&M beats LSU. What's more beneficial? I mean, maybe, but you don't want a ticked-off team. So LSU goes there and wins, and then you go there and beat them on their place, and it gives you some credibility. I mean, that's a nice win. Right now, Georgia is the resume builder, but then you go to Baton Rouge, you get a win. You try to find a win. And I think that this team, from a health standpoint, if you can manage the Missouri game, you go into the Missouri Tigers, homecoming, and if you're able to get 2 weeks to prepare, do we just look up at the football gods and say, thank you for the double bye week? Thank you for the double bye week? Where would this team be? Where would any football team without be the double bye week in the SEC? Let's go to Paul in Lincoln, and then I'll do my State of the Union coming up after Barrett Jones. Paul, good afternoon, sir. You're in the game.
Ryan, is it safe to embrace the suck?
No, it is. It absolutely is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Hey, we that looking at Auburn always makes you feel good.
Well, as bad as it is in Tuscaloosa, from a historical standpoint, this is what we've come to expect from the Lee County Booger Tigers.
It's just become the norm. It's become the norm.
It's just become the norm. They're well on their way to their fourth consecutive losing season. They're well on their way to not even making it to Birmingham. I mean, think about that. I mean, that's about where they would send the last bowl eligible SEC team would be to Birmingham. And the Bugs, they're that's not good. They're not going there. It's really glorious. As upset as I am with Alabama's season so far. I just look across the state into that area we call Lee County, and it puts a smile on my face. So I guess you got to take the bad with the good.
You do.
Bad being Alabama, and the good to great being the Bugs. But Ron, I'm glad you survived yesterday's show because it was a
little bit of a challenge.
There was
I had to visit with a sports psychologist. I had to get my mind right. It called up Dr. Rosen, which is somebody Alabama's worked with forever, and I had to get my mind right. He didn't have a time for my appointment wise, but I had to depend on some other people to get me focused in because. Yesterday was a challenge. And you know what? Part of that challenge was on me. Because I literally went back to the preseason predictions. And no, I didn't have Alabama losing to Vanderbilt, but I did have Alabama losing a couple of games. I thought they had a chance to go 11-1, but it's almost like we predicted, and then when the week gets here, we're like, no, I'm not picking against Alabama. Are you kidding? But you think about it. Replacing Nick Saban, is that not the hardest job in the country?
It's certainly the most improbable job to take over. Maybe it rivals even Ray Perkins taking over for Bear Bryant. I mean, I remember I was alive and well during that time frame, and it was a difficult job. Now Ray came in and he kind of displaced about everything Coach Bryant. I mean, he took down the tower. He brought back, which I'm not going to get into that. He brought back the white helmets. He did some things different. He wanted to do it his way, and but. What Coach DeBoer is trying to follow will never be replicated in my lifetime. I just turned 61 yesterday. So
I missed the birthday. As soon as I hung up from you, I said, "Dadgummit, I missed the birthday." And I wrote it up here on the screen that I was going to sing to you. But yesterday was a little bit of chaos. Which I
understand.
You and Coach DeBoer are going to have a rough week as far as birthdays.
Yes.
Because he turns 50 on Thursday, and we have
for 15 of the 16 of the last 18 meetings with Tennessee, I kind of marked my birthday with a Alabama victory over the Vols, but not in 2024. Ryan, the season absolutely. We're in a 5-game season now.
We are
a 5-game season. It starts Saturday with Missouri, coming off an emotional win over the Booger Tigers. The Boogs were up 17-3 late in the third quarter, and Brady Cook gets off the mat, gets out of the hospital, the gurney out of the hospital, and comes on the field and leads Missouri back to a victory over the Boogs. So they're going to come in here with a lot of confidence. Because listen, I think they're one loss. They've got one loss in the conference to A&M, but they've got a lot to play for. I know Alabama. There's no wiggle room left.
Nope.
There is no wiggle room left with the Crimson Tide. It's feast or famine from here on out. So, and you're right. From what I'm hearing, the injuries have mounted on this team, and it's Coach DeBoer is having to do this with.
Well, and I think if we went back to that show and we repeated the show where we did our preseason predictions, we also said they must navigate the injury bug.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, they've been able to do that, but in many ways, in one position, defensive backs, they've not been able to. I mean, it's been let's just say the black jersey is a very popular jersey at the University of Alabama this week and last week and the week prior.
Yeah. So we'll have to fight through this Saturday. I mean, I think it's going to be a dogfight. And
hey, Paul,
but hopefully
you got a score for me?
Go ahead. Yeah, we don't have to pick the tiebreaker.
We do. Your first caller out of the gate.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know I don't know what else to pick here, Ryan. Maybe do we?
I think if we went passing yards for the Missouri Tigers, it would help us appreciate the defensive backs.
Okay, that's a good one.
I mean, you know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, you look at Bray Hubbard, and that guy, I saw some videos just from him at practice and hearing from people that I've spoken to behind the scenes. He's a guy that, is he going to be, a first rounder? Who knows? Maybe he can be in a few years, but there's going to be some growing pains. But, hey, just think, and this is a warning out there for the SEC fans, you better get Alabama because they're young, and what are these players going to be able to do if you can hold on to them at sophomores and juniors?
Yeah, you got to be able to keep the roster intact.
Yeah, I'm here painting expectations for the future, but I'm just looking at all these young players that are playing because, we talked about Minkah Fitzpatrick. We opened the segment. Look at what he did in 3 years because of those growing pains that we had to tolerate. I just think about Minkah because, what a player. But, Paul, let's go Missouri passing yards. Mizzou.
Let's do it.
All right.
Missouri passing yards. Okay. All right. Give me, I'm going to go Bama. Give me Alabama. 28, Missouri 24.
Ooh, okay. And Mizzou passing?
231 yards.
Okay, 231, 28-24, 231. Paul, enjoy that Kamala rally tomorrow, man.
Ryan, I'm headed to the ATL for the big MAGA Trump rally. I'll try to give you reports if I'm able to tomorrow. But like I always sign off with, Ryan, roll Tide and roll MAGA.
Thank you. Paul and Lincoln. Barrett Jones coming up in just a couple of minutes. 2-time, according to Alabama, I just got a press release a couple of minutes ago, he was considered a 3-time All-American. The SEC Legends class has been announced. Barrett Jones will represent the University of Alabama.
Story one time when we were together at an event, so he knew he knew it was right. But hey, I respect it. I respect him. He had to do what he had to do for the team, so it is what it is.
All right. A couple of weeks ago, you had a chance to come down and talk to Alabama. You had a chance to share your story about playing here at the University of Alabama. I'm curious if you can take us there, because that'll help us kind of understand this SEC legend. We're talking to Barrett Jones right now, 3-time All-American, one of the most decorated players to ever wear the crimson jersey. He will be a part of the SEC Legends class of the 2024 edition that will be honored at the upcoming SEC title game. What'd you tell him? Did you tell him any good stories about playing here? I mean, because I think we even heard the audio version that you were telling DeBoer, I'm just a washed-up offensive lineman. And he said, I think he asked you how many national titles, and you said, well, I won 3 here. And he was kind of taken back from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, I didn't really talk to the team. That was a little bit overblown, but it was very nice of people to think that. I just went to practice and talked to a couple of the offensive linemen afterwards. And just told them, to stay locked in and try to get better every day, just kind of some general things. But it wasn't really like an organized speaking thing. But I did enjoy going to practice and kind of seeing how things operated, and was very impressed with the tempo of practice and the way guys were flying around. There was a lot to be impressed about. So, yeah, it was a little less formal maybe than, I don't know if you know this, Ryan, but Instagram can be deceiving these days.
Yes, it can be. I mean, Barrett, I thought they came and got you like in the private jet. I mean, I figured they would.
No. None of that. I just asked to go to practice, and then I rode around in a car for 15 minutes and talked about it. So that was it. It was a, Instagram versus reality kind of situation. So I'm not important enough to talk to the team. I'm just little old me.
Just an old wash-up SEC legend. All right, so final question.
Legend does sound old. Just kind of weird to sound old.
No, so. I mean, it's reflection time. Give me
my 4-year-old. He was in trouble with me the other day, and he's 4, so keep that in mind. He's a very sweet kid, but he was angry at me, and he was trying to figure out what he was going to say to me, and he just looked at me and said, "You're a mean old man." And I was like, "Thank you, son. I love you too." So, you're getting old. Starting to get cold old a little bit. 34.
What did you do to get called the old man? I mean, what were you? I mean.
Yeah, I just removed some privileges. It's a very specific, but yeah, I just, I told him if he did it again, he was going to have to go to his room, and he did it again. So we had to remove him from the situation. He was frustrated at me. So anyway, it wasn't a big deal.
Is he the oldest out of the kids?
He is. He's got a 4, 2, and 8 month old. 4-year-old, 2-year-old, and 8 month. And I'm taking him to his first game this weekend, so I'm very excited.
Okay, so you got to set.
If anyone sees me out at the stadium, be nice to me around my kid at least. Okay, you can cuss me out later if you want to, but be nice to me around my kid.
Barrett Jones, 3-time All-American at the University of Alabama. It's going to be great to see you be recognized at the SEC title game. Who knows? Maybe everybody will lose, and we'll have Vanderbilt and Alabama in the rematch over in Atlanta. I mean, it could be.
Yeah, I don't feel good about that, but I love your optimism.
Okay, all right. I'm just a half full type guy here this year. I don't know. I'm just trying to be patient. If Nick Saban was still here, we'd be having a rant. I mean, it would be full. I mean, it would be it'd be crazy. But we don't want to scare DeBoer off too much. We want to be just going to be okay.
I understand. I love it. Look at you. You're really matured. Very impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I have to accept this new college football that Alabama's not going to win every year. And what you guys were able to do 3 out of the last 4, nobody's going to be able to do that. Nobody will be able to win 3 out of 4. You can come back and you can make me the piñata if I'm wrong. It's not going to happen again. They're not going to go back to back. I mean, you're just not going to see that. The world of college football, and that's when I look at what you guys were able to do. We're going to look back, and I've said this to you, 20 years from now, we'll look back and we'll go, you guys did what? 3 out of the last 4? 2 in a row? It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was a good run. Georgia almost did it, but it couldn't quite pull it off. So,
and who stopped him? Who stopped him?
That's right. We did, thankfully. I appreciate that. That was nice to preserve our legacy like that. So,
said no.
Anyway.
Barrett Jones, I appreciate you, man. No doubt, man. Congrats for being in the inducted in the upcoming SEC Legends class. And hopefully we'll see you at are you sitting in the box on Saturday? I mean, you got good seats. I mean, you need me to help you out with that? Anything I can do?
Yeah, you got box seats? That'd be great. Get a box. No, I'm just sitting in the regular seat. I'm just a regular old dude, Ryan.
I look for you often when I walk down the field because you always have those great seats. Those are really good seats. I don't know if those are still yours, but they
were never mine, Ryan. They were never mine. I never owned them. So.
Oh, really?
I had access to them sometimes, but they're not mine. So.
Okay. And hey, we got to get the speaking of the old man, we got to get him on to talk basketball. Man, we're a basketball school too now, by the way. Nate Oates has been able to do some special things, so we're excited here. We're counting down to basketball, believe it or not. 13 days away. 13 days away.
Man, we used to not even talk about basketball until football was over. Things have changed. But I love it. I'm locked into basketball. I'm fired up.
Yeah, me too. Barrett, appreciate you, man. Thank you again for being a part of the show, and congrats to you from all of us here in Tuscaloosa, man.
See you, man. All right, bye.
Thank you. Barrett Jones, 2-time All-American, 3-time All-American, and all the different winnings that he was able to win as far as trophies. We'll continue with more of the game. Tide 100.9, 1230 WTBC, your home of Alabama Crimson Tide Sports. All right, so here we go. 205-342-9904. I went back yesterday, and I listened to some of my show yesterday, and I listened to some of the reaction, and I thought to myself, we do go back, and Robert in Mobile, I'm going to take you up. Bubba in Northport, we're going to get to you as well. Robert first up, then Bubba, and then we'll get to Pat Tuscaloosa. Pat, you're up. Tommy, we'll get to you. Score Prediction Day presented by Southern Ale House. But I got to thinking about some of the things that we had talked about, right? When you look back, and you always have to go back and further evaluate, right? It's not just a loss to Tennessee. It's not just a loss to Vanderbilt, right? You have to go back and understand. We can walk us through a little bit of a timeline here, right? Nick Saban retires. Go back in January on that Wednesday. We're sitting here and we're going, Nick Saban retires. Well, then at that point, that portal window opens. And we all know this, but it's almost a good refresher because it was for me as well. You go back and you study that Wednesday, January the 10th. And you think about that 30-day period of holding this team together. That's the part when you think about the key leaders. And maybe that would have been a better question for Barrett Jones, to be able to hold a group together, to be able to say, you know what? It would probably be the easiest method for me to throw my name in the portal. It would be the easiest method to throw my name in the portal and let it run. It would be the easiest just to say, all right, I came to Coach Saban. I committed to the University of Alabama because he was there and he was going to get me to the NFL, but I'm out of here. But the players that are out there are making, you hear the stories about Keon Sabb. And I promise you, when Kalen DeBoer, he used the word in the post-game press conference, and Jaisha, we may play that from Saturday night when you look at the players making sacrifices. He talked about that in the post-game press conference, talked about, we'll never know. Jaisha, if you've got that, and we can always play in the next segment, you give me a thumbs up if we have it. I know I'm throwing you a curveball down and away, but we'll play that because it does kind of remind you. And it's not just Keon Sabb, right? It's in other situations. Think about if Keon Sabb sets down. What if there's other players that are injuries? Because he labeled it yesterday as defensive backs. He labeled it as a group of defensive backs. He said, now they should be able to go. But you go back to the Tennessee game. Alabama lost the game. It's an L. Any way you spin it, it's an L. But I almost go back and I understand from a roster management standpoint, this is the hardest job in the entire country. There's no doubt. It's the hardest job. It is. There will never be a job right now when you think about it. Kirby Smart retired today. And he said, guys, I'm done. I got that Texas win. End of the season, I'm out of here, man. Appreciate you guys. That job doesn't even, in the magnitude of the University of Alabama replacing the greatest football coach, we could have probably went back where Coach Perkins passed away, and we could have probably understood the challenges of coming in for Coach Paul Bear Bryant back in 1983. But you think about Kalen DeBoer stepping in, for him coming into the University of Alabama. I think, we've did this throughout the offseason, kind of applauded his recognition to be able to say, hey, I'm willing to follow the legend. I'm willing to sign up for that. And he mentioned that yesterday. He signed up for that responsibility, right? He signed up to say, okay, I'm willing to do it. I know that the pressure cooker that's the University of Alabama, the high standard that he's referred to multiple times, winning a national title. But I almost felt like yesterday I got a little bit unrealistic with myself. And it was reflection time. You spend a little time thinking about it. They didn't make it easy. Nick Saban retired, and for the next 30 days, they were able to pick apart your roster. And you have departures, but see, here's the problem. It's not about the departures. It's about trying to get roster spots back. Okay, you lose this guy. Well, let me go get another 5-star. Well, it didn't happen that way. Recruiting at that point is done. It's done. And you were able to lock a lot of that class together. But the opening up of the roster and allowing, and it'll happen this year. Whoever gets fired, somebody will go and they'll pick apart that roster. You ever think about that's a dumb move in the world of college athletics, that 30-day period? Because you don't even get a chance to coach to establish himself. And so then you got to go out and replace a lot of these guys that you lose in the portal. All right? But the only problem is you can only go to certain schools because you have to go to coaches that were fired, right? You go Keon Sabb, go through the list. You go to Michigan, where Jim Harbaugh went to the NFL, so that opened up. You go back to UW because Kalen DeBoer's here, which makes a new coach there, and then you open up that 30-day window. So you're able to go through those different elements. But then when you do think about it, your key spots at injuries, you didn't manage, the injury bug. It was not on Alabama's side this year. Now, that doesn't excuse a loss. It doesn't. And I think when you hear the players talking, no, they're not using that rebuttal. They're not saying the conversation with, hey, forgive me for the L. It's what about, 1-0. And as C.J. Dupree talked about earlier today, just trying to refocus, trying to rekindle that expectation. And I think when you look back at Coach Saban's first year here in Tuscaloosa, we could probably go back to that group. Maybe it's Mike Johnson, the All-American offensive lineman, or maybe it's, Baron Huber or John Parker Wilson. Trying to reestablish that's a challenge in any year. But I think in the current parameters of college football, here we are. We are. And many times we think we know something, but we really don't. Like we pretend like we know something, but we really don't. Like we look at it and we have this standard of expectation, as we should. It's what's special about this place. It's what makes this place pretty awesome. The world of college football has changed right in front of our eyes, and it's Robert Mobile's fault. Robert, good afternoon. You're in the game. I hope all is well. You pushed for this, Robert. You pushed for this.
I pushed for the playoffs. How usually transfer it.
But do you ever think about it? You're an engineer. You ever think sometimes we look at the results and then you got to go back and explain why it happened?
Well, again, the only thing we know about the new system is that right now it's not working for us because we're suffering. And of course, it's a matter of opinion as to whether it's good or bad. You think it's good or I think it's bad. It's an opinion. One opinion versus another. There's no good or bad. Now, if good or bad, it can ultimately be if people start putting people in the seats and people don't watch anymore. Okay, well now that's bad, on any scale. Yeah, but if people are still watching and they're still going to stadium, they're still filling out stadiums.
Oh, the ratings are off the charts. Alabama, Tennessee, it was the second highest game in the country. Now, some of that is because they're going to stomp on your grave. Even though they're beating a first-year head coach, they're beating Alabama. They still tore down the goalpost. They still tore down the goalpost, and I'm like, really?
It's the second time you do it. Yeah, really. They're gonna do it every year now from now on.
Every year.
You beat us 7 years. When you beat us 7 years in a row, you tell it back in the day, were you tearing down the goalpost then?
It just shows you how much beating Alabama really means to these cats, man. It's like we are the standard, and by you tearing down the field goal post, I'd use that as a recruiting pitch. I'd be like, look, Nobody else tears down field goal posts when they win against smaller team. We are the standard of Alabama, of college football. Even though we've taken a little bit of a break for kicking people in the teeth, something tells me this coaching staff, there's some growing pains because of the depth issues. But Robert, can you close your eyes just for a minute and you look at the future of these young players and the roles that they're going to be able to play? Because we broke them in this year. And if you can keep them around, which is another element of college football that we don't calculate, man, these guys are going to be good. I mean, Ryan Williams as a sophomore next year because of the experience that he gained this year.
Yeah, if Texas doesn't take him.
Screw Texas.
Texas can't get him, I guess, because unless we fire Kalen DeBoer, we don't know when it will be that bad.
Well, I mean, they can come. I mean, they can come. They can come calling. But I think when you look at it, that goes back to that relationships. You hear these players talking about these authentic relationships. How valuable is that in the time that we live in?
We got Alabama also, with Saban retiring, we got to kind of, that opened the door for us to get hit. Because you keep looking at Georgia and Kirby, which unless we hate it, right now he is the reigning king of college football. Somebody's got to be it. It looks like it's him. He's navigating that pretty well. Yeah, he lost to Alabama again. But, with the expanded playoffs, that's just, a blip just a blip. It can either be a blip or you can tear your team down. He just let it be a blip. Alabama inability to handle success. Well, now we have a problem. Bear Jones hit the nail on the head real well with Jalen Milroe, and I guess people call him a great runner, and he's just really fast. Bear Jones is totally right about that. He's really fast, but he's not a great runner even for a quarterback. Like the Patrick Mahomes or the Lamar Jackson. Those guys or the Tim Tebows back in the day. They were elusive, not just fast. They were elusive. They were hard to bring down. And, Milroe's not hard to bring down. Once you can trip him really easily or
he's got a lot of straight line running. His speed, I thought Barrett said that a couple of minutes ago, but there's some wiggle, but it's not as much wiggle as you think.
Yeah, no, it's not. And that's nothing that gets us. Makes him a little less effective. It's okay. If he has some wiggle with that speed, that would help a lot as well. But he doesn't have that. And so, but Kirby's navigating the new college football, and we're going to have to learn too. Now, and DeBoer might be able to navigate it again. Like you said earlier, we allowed ourselves to believe something that wasn't there without evidence. We allowed ourselves to just imagine a championship. The first year Nick Saban's not there. And that just, I don't know if anybody's ever done that in college football. Maybe it's happened. I just don't remember.
Well, and if you go back and study Kalen DeBoer, okay, let's go back to 2022, the first season at UW, okay? He opens up, you'll see the relation where I'm going here. Kent State, 45-20. Portland State, 52-6. Michigan State, 39-28, okay? Little bit of struggle there, but a little tighter game. Then he beats 40-22 Stanford. And then it kind of hits a little bit of a rut. You lose at UCLA 40-32. UCLA's not worth a darn.
Mm.
Then you play Arizona State in Tempe, back-to-back road games, and you lose that one too. You know what happened then? He went on a winning streak that he didn't lose again until the national championship game in the following year. Now, and I know that's the Pac-12, and this is the SEC. There's a big difference. But when you look at understanding, it takes a little bit of time to implement your program. And that was probably my biggest stretch is when I look back and I said, oh, come on, he'll just take Saban's system. No, he's got to put his own personality. He's got to be able to put his own stamp of it. Players are still learning. What are those expectations? How much can I get by with? What can I do that I won't get in trouble? What can I do? But think about the disciplinary side of things. There hasn't really been a lot of those off the field. And people keep talking about disciplinary issues and how this team is they got a lot of disciplinary issues. Really? Send me the press releases, because I haven't seen anybody that, knock on wood, they haven't really had a lot of off-the-field issues. Have they?
Yeah, that may have to change about the disciplinary issues. And, that we're going to have to get more discipline one way or the other. Somebody like Martin Houston pointed out, too, we forget, there was a lot of things we call discipline problems when Saban was there after his last year. It wasn't, remember Saban with rose-colored glasses, which is how you should remember somebody
you're going.
Appreciate.
Keep going, Robert. I know where you're going. Keep going.
This is how you should remember someone you really appreciate. That's how you remember your loved ones. You don't remember the bad things they did. You just remember the good when they're gone. And that's how it should be. So that's what we're doing with Saban. So I definitely cut DeBoer more slack. Give him another year. Get his system in there. And this year, unfortunately, it's going to be. But it just kind of is disappointing.
Well, it's
the
not
first year of a 12-team
playoff,
and Alabama may not be in.
This year, as we gave Coach Saban back in 2007, was a mulligan. We gave him a 7-5 season. We are like, okay, let's not overreact. Because I remember in 2007, we did overreact. Oh, man, this Saban guy, he can't do it. Next year, he went undefeated. Let Kalen DeBoer go out in the recruiting side of things, because now if Alabama didn't have a recruiting class to supplement, because the talent is not where it was a few years ago. They got to clean up some of that. They got to be able to reestablish some areas. They've got some areas of need. Recruiting, guess where Alabama is in recruiting right now?
They were number one.
They are number one. They are number one, and there could be more good news on the horizon.
Yeah, it's just disappointing, though, first year of the 12-team playoff, and it's a really good chance we may not be in it.
Would you bet on it? Would you bet on it right now? I mean, because I probably wouldn't bet that Alabama would be a playoff team, but get through the Missouri game. I think it all comes down to Baton Rouge, because I think we'll beat Oklahoma on the road. I think we'll beat Oklahoma on the road, Mercer and Auburn. And you know what? If you're 10-2, you're in the playoffs, man. You're in the play. If you can hang your hat on, that's why you need LSU to go beat Texas A&M on the road.
Oh, one more thing before I go, which is also disappointing. We just don't want to figure. I always break the SEC into the four quarters, the four quintiles.
Sure.
The upper, middle, lower. We're out of the upper. The first time in a very long time, Alabama is not one of the four best teams in the SEC. That's almost unthinkable to think about, but it is what it is. We're in the middle.
Who would you have? Who would you have at the tops? I mean, like if I said number one team in the SEC.
Of course, it's Georgia and Texas.
Okay, so I mean, you'd have it in that order: Georgia, Texas.
Yes. Texas A&M right now is playing better ball than Alabama is. I mean, that's what it is. And LSU is on the fence.
LSU's on the fence.
I would put, but they have the better record in the SEC right now.
And we get to decide that LSU, Texas A&M, and then whoever, if Alabama can beat Missouri, then they'll go on the road and they'll have a chance.
Yep.
To me, that's the game. That is the game. That is the game. You win that, you beat Mercer, you beat Oklahoma. Yeah, you got to take care of the Auburn Tigers. Who knows from an injury standpoint side of things? I mean, here we are. We were countering expectations by countering it with more expectations. I mean, here we are. Robert, we just can't run from it. But here, give me a score.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Well, the offense is back down to earth again. I'm going to go 23-20 Alabama.
Oh, Lord. Yeah. All right. Mizzou passing yards?
235.
I got it. Thank you, man. Appreciate you, Robert. We'll continue with more of the game next. Tide 100.9. All right, we welcome you right back into the game here in Tuscaloosa. Let's go to Jamie over in Mississippi. Jamie, good afternoon. You're in the game. I hope all is well.
How are you doing, Ryan?
I'm good. Just getting ready for this homecoming weekend. Pretty special, but spending a little time recapping Tennessee. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I understand the new football and I understand the NIL and all that, but I can live with getting beat by Tennessee if they play well and if they got a good team. But my biggest concern, and there's an old saying in coaching, and I've been an offense coordinator for over 20 years, and control what you can control. I mean, you can't control injuries. You can't control who comes recruiting-wise all the time. But my biggest concern is offensive play calling. And I think his biggest loss was losing his offensive coordinator when he left. And because we got a guy that's never called plays, and Troy Aikman alluded to it last night on Monday Night Football. He talked about the hardest thing to do is to find a good offensive coordinator that can put plays together. I mean, if you look at our season, even against Wisconsin, we scored points, but they were explosive plays. And we score early against Georgia because I think we're on script. And then when we get off script, we hit a couple of plays to Ryan Williams, but, we have not been able to put plays together. We have not had any balance. We have not had any mix. We come out the second half the other night and we run 8 running plays in a row. And it's just, and I understand we're average at running back and we don't have great receivers right now, but our offensive play calling, to me, has been a major concern. We're second and goal from the 3, and we throw a fade, back shoulder fade to a freshman receiver who's not physically strong. He's very, very talented, but down there he's going to get bullied by an older corner, and that's what happened. And then we come down the next drive and we do the same thing, and luckily he bats it to himself and catches it. So my concern is offensive play calling. We can't control injuries. We can't control all that stuff.
Well, the offense is supposed to be able to carry this team. It was supposed to be able to carry this team and take some pressure off that defensive side of the football. And you go back to the Tennessee game, heck, the Tennessee, with as many injuries as they had in the secondary, that was probably the bright spot coming out of Saturday, is how that defense held it together for the length of time that they did.
Yeah, and then, we couldn't handle their front. And we couldn't handle their blitz pickup, or their packages. So what about screens? We ran 0 screens Saturday. We could say, well, Jalen Milroe doesn't throw screens well. I get that. But what about DeBoer says last week that he's run shovel pass everywhere he's ever been. Shovel pass slows rush down, draw. But that's what concerns me is we have no answers to stuff on offense. And our secondary's young, and, I thought our defense played pretty good the other day. We gave up a couple of misfits on counter and things like that. But I don't know that he's going to be able to survive with this offensive play calling. And I want him to do well. I think he's a great guy, and I think he's a great football coach. And I want him to do well, but he might have to do something different with the offensive play calling.
How much do you think that is on the quarterback, that you're limited?
I think it could be some. The first college class I ever took in coaching was at Southern Mississippi in 2000, and our teacher said this: don't ever ask a kid to do something he can't do because you're going to make a failure out of him. Well, we dropped back 50 times the other day. Now, it only showed 45 because he scrambled 5. But we dropped back 50 times the other day with a lead. We trailed at Vanderbilt. So you can say we were trailing, but with a lead, we dropped back 50 times, and I think we had like 3 quarterback runs. And I just think you got to ask kids to do what they can do. But Vanderbilt outplayed us. I can almost live with the Vanderbilt game better. Everything they did worked. It hit. They played hard. We should have won the game Saturday. We should have been up 21 or 24 to nothing at halftime.
We should have, yeah.
And we weren't. We get an interception by Malachi Moore, and we lose 40 yards, 40 penalties and a intentional grounding. We lost 40 yards. That's bad. That's embarrassing, I think. But play calling offensively, that has nothing to do with NIL. That has nothing to do with Saban leaving. You can either do it or you can't. I think it's God-given. I've always thought that, calling pitches, calling offense. You can think ahead. You can see ahead. You can think on your feet. You don't get sped up. But we do pretty good on script early if you look. And when we get off script, it seems like we struggle. So that's my opinion.
No, I think it's good. I mean, I think it's good. And you almost wonder, as far as the crowd noise, how that may have impacted from a audible standpoint, not audible standpoint, but from the speaker in the ear. It was almost, I'd say, probably a crutch a little bit. And then when that goes away, it's panic time.
Yeah, and the thing about the two kids, you know, acting like they were shooting a basketball, I mean, when we used to run quarterback sneak, and when we do run quarterback sneak, we put receivers way out there, and we usually run bubble. You know, we tell them to run bubble or do whatever you want to do. Just make sure the corner or whoever's out there covering you occupy him. So that's not a big deal to me. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. There's a reason they did it, I'm sure, but that's not a big deal. But the other stuff, I mean, second goal from the 3, running back shoulder fade to a freshman receiver who's not physically strong, that's the issue. And every time we get in quad and we cover a receiver up, it's tailback run every time. It's been 100% this year.
You think Milroe's tipping the running plays?
Well, that's a tip. I mean, you can go back. I guarantee you can go back and look at every game we played. When we get in quads to one side and we cover a receiver, so when he's covered, he can't go downfield, it's been tailback run 100% of the time this year, every time. So I don't know. If I were Kalen DeBoer, and I've always delegated, let my assistant coach just coach, but I've always told him, I'm going to let you coach till it starts costing us victories. And if I were Kalen DeBoer, I would call offensive plays. That's just me. But I think that's our biggest problem. We left points against Georgia in the first half now. If you go back and look at the end of the first half, we left points there too with some crazy play calling. And then I don't know the play on 4th and 22. I mean, they free-released the back, but they brought 6, and we got 5 linemen and a tailback, so we had a 6-man protection. I would assume that's just the play that they wanted to run, and if Ryan Williams blocks the corner, we got a chance there. But we had it. It was not hot. I mean, we had enough to protect that. And what's crazy to me is they got us 4th and 22, and Tennessee brings 6. I mean, that's crazy. You know, back in the day, you weren't going to bring 6 or 5 when you got somebody 4th or 3rd and 22. But I guess they were being aggressive, and it paid off for them. But I don't know. You know, I can live with 10 and 2. You know, I took my son to Tiger Stadium a couple of years ago, and they run the great, you know, the Hyde route with the tight end coming back underneath, and they beat us on the 2-point conversion. That's football. You know, and Bryce Young threw an interception the first drive that night, and we could have won the game. But they played good, and we played good, and we got beat. I can live with that. But when you should have 24 points at halftime and you got 7, that's not good. I mean, that's hard to watch. That's aggravating to me. So, and I'm an Alabama grad. I got a master's there. I love Alabama, and I'm going to be Roll Tide to the day I die. But I think he's going to have to do something offensive play calling wise. I really do. So.
Hey, what do you know about Bray Hubbard? Did you ever see him at Ocean Springs?
He's a great player, and I think he'll play well. I mean, he's highly intelligent, and he's fast. I saw him play quarterback now. So my question the other day when he went in was, because playing quarterback and playing safety is 2 different animals. You know, me and my son were watching the game, and he's like, Hubbard's in. I was like, let's see if he can be physical. And he was physical. He came down and tackled. I was really impressed. I think he'll play well.
Yeah,
I really do.
In the building, they label him as a dog.
Well, that's good.
He's not afraid to put his nose in there. Let's just say it like that. So
he's intelligent, and he's going to play hard. You know, he's a winner.
I mean, as much as a 2-time Mississippi Mr. Football, that's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, he is.
You got a score?
I'm going to go 38-28.
38-28.
Alabama.
Mizzou passing yards is our tiebreaker.
I think they're going to throw for 320 yards. I really do.
Hey.
I hate to say that.
I mean, hey, when you got a defensive back, you're just going to have to over-counter it with the offensive side of the football.
I don't think they can run the ball on us. So I think they're going to have to throw, and I think they can. So Anyway.
All right. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it, man.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Thank you, Jamie, over in Mississippi. We'll go to Brian here in, I believe it's Tuscaloosa, maybe somewhere else. Then we'll go to Jared, and we'll go to Tommy, and we'll continue with more of it going on now.
You'll be making the plays, you'll be making the bets, and finally getting the sports glory you deserve. The Sportsbook at Golden Moon Casino. Play the game.
Northport Power Equipment, largest inventory Husqvarna dealer in the Southeast. You'll find the Husqvarna models for residential and the professional landscapers, Skag commercial mowers, residential mowers, backpack blowers, handheld blowers, battery-operated tools. The service department at Northport Power Equipment.
Friday, November the 15th at 2 p.m. as we broadcast live and pick a winner to go watch the Tide take on Oklahoma. Compliments of Pepsi and the Deli Press. Roll Tide.
Tide 100.9 traffic.
Tuscaloosa traffic now from the Townsend Nissan Traffic Center. Well, we're still looking a bit slow. Actually, a lot slow in several areas. Now, McFarland, you have a long perimeter of delays, and that is in both directions between 2059 and Lurleen Wallace. So you do still have some patchy traffic there on and off your brakes. And Lurleen Wallace continues with its slow roll.
Save and get quality protection. Yep, it's a win-win. So what are you waiting for? Check Allstate first for a quote today. You're in good hands with Allstate.
El Grant is the great Mexican place in Winn-Dixie Shopping Center. Go over and see my friends Carlos, 205-391-4555, 62 McFarland Boulevard, Monday through Thursday, 11 until 9:30. Friday and Saturday, 11 until 10:30. Sunday, also open 11 until 9. You'll find the great daily lunch specials. You'll find great entrees included.
Site app and use promo code MOON5 to get up to a $5 bonus on your first tank. That's code MOON5 to get up to a $5 bonus on your first tank.
Where college football season never ends. The Game with Ryan Fowler. Your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9.
It's big boy football.
And streaming on the